So we're in the afternoon of the practice day, second part. And Diana, did you have a question?
Go ahead.
Well, I don't even know if I know how to phrase what my question is. I think I'm just
Try
generally
phrasing it.
confused.
It's good. It's a good exercise, even trying to phrase the questions.
So in the last class, you talked about Lama Tsongkhapa achieving enlightenment in place of the bardo.
Right, that's good terminology, because sometimes they say in the bardo, but as the text said, it's in place of the bardo.
But I thought you also mentioned that he used reaching the clear light of death as opposed to using a karma mudra but it seems to me that you have to already achieve the sun clear light in order to mix it with the mother clear light, that you have to already be at the stage of the example clear light, which then leads to the impure illusory body before the time of death.
For what?
In order, well, so that's what I'm not sure. I'm confused. I guess I'm confused about using the time of death versus just in meditation.
For what?
For definitely reaching the impure illusory body.
For definitely?
For reaching the impure, can you attain the impure illusory body before the time of death just through meditation? That you achieve the example clear light in meditation and then the impure illusory body? Or does that only happen at the time of death?
Go ahead.
Definitely you can attain the impure illusory body before the time of death. Generally, in a lot of the tantras, it says that you have to rely on a karma mudra, but many of the lamas mention that that's for the ordinary, maybe lowest caliber disciple, that those of higher caliber can attain the metaphoric clear light, which, the isolation of mind, which causes the airs through which, you have to have caused the airs to enter into the central channel at the heart and indestructible drop. Usually to do that, you need a karma mudra, but some of higher faculties can do it with a visualized consort, and those of highest faculty, it said, can cause that without even having to visualize a consort through the Mahamudra. So meditating on emptiness, through the force of meditating on emptiness. So you can...
What stage was he at? Entered.
Well, so what stage was he at, and what stage did he appear to be at? Or two different questions, because, like, for instance, even Nagarjuna, according to how he acted in the world, was a certain level bodhisattva, and who took the aspect of attaining enlightenment through the practice of Tantra, but we believe that he was already could have been a Buddha already, manifesting like that. Also a Sangha and others, and Lama Tsongkhapa was already enlightened according to one understanding. So whatever he did may have been just a manifestation, but what he manifested doing was achieving enlightenment in place of the bardo. So I'm not sure if there are different interpretations of what level he achieved. Generally, if you achieve the impure illusory body in this lifetime, which require, the point being that in order to do that, you have to have had the metaphoric clear light and lowest caliber depended on a karma mudra. But once you've attained that, it's said that you cannot die until achieving enlightenment in that very life. So Lama Tsongkhapa may have already achieved that, but as a lesson for others, especially because the Gelugpa tradition puts emphasis on moral discipline, and for fear that if Lama Tsongkhapa, say for instance, if Lama Tsongkhapa were to have manifested or said, or other disciples said he attained enlightenment in the lifetime, there would be the doubt, he must have used a karma mudra. Let's get us one. So there would be the possibility of degeneration due to monks and nuns in the Gelugpa tradition thinking there was open season on pretending to practice Tantra, or thinking that they were practicing Tantra, but not being qualified and actually causing a lot of degeneration.
So that's not my question. Because if, in order to mix the mother clear light, you have to mix the mother clear light with the sun clear light, and with the sun clear light, you have to
For what? To achieve enlightenment.
achieve.
Enlightenment in one short lifetime in this body. But see,
If you manifest in the bardo, what you're doing is that you achieve the isolation of mind at the time of death, rather than relying on a karma mudra to bring the heirs in the central channel, and through that metaphoric clear light, arise in the bardo or depending on your karma, I guess you would rise then in the bardo in a impure illusory body first of all, and then continue meditating. Because of that particular situation, you won't, as you've arisen as the illusory body, and you've separated from this body, not due to causing the gross body to cease through meditation. Remember, that was the essential thing. In order for the illusory body to arise, you had to cease the gross body. Ceasing of the gross body can take a place, can mean at the time of death, when all of the airs have entered in the central channel and all you have is the very subtle, most clear light mind and subtle wind there, the gross body is essentially ceased due to karma. There's still a connection for a short time until you arise from the clear light, but you can arise then in place of the bardo. Instead of the bardo, at the point of the black near attainment, you arise as the impure illusory body in place of the bardo. So then that will not take rebirth any longer due to karma, delusion. So you're not actually in the bardo. You have an impure illusory body that then meditates and enters into clear light and arises and realizes at some point the meaning clear light in that state, and arises as the pure illusory body and continues to meditate on emptiness and eliminates the obstructions to omniscience. So that takes a particular kind of person to be able to do that. It has the karma to be able to do that, I guess. But Lama Tsongkhapa took that aspect, perhaps, so as, because if he manifested achieving the impure illusory body beforehand, there would be doubt that he had relied upon a consort.
Wouldn't he necessarily have had to have realized the impure illusory body before the time of death in order to mix the mother and son clear light?
No, he just had to achieve right before the stage of illusory body, which means the impure illusory body, is a stage called isolation of mind. So at that point, when isolation of mind is when you're able to cause all the winds to enter into the indestructible drop at the heart, and to give rise to these fully qualified visions. And then at the end of that, and usually in order to do that, you have to rely upon karma mudra. That's well before illusory body. So at the time of death, however, you don't have to rely upon a karma mudra in order for all the winds to enter in. They enter in normally, and you can achieve if you've meditated, say if you already achieved the isolation of speech and you have intention to do so and you have the karma, it's possible to then achieve at the clear light of death, that becomes the what's it called? The metaphoric clear light. Because you achieve at that point the isolation of mind. Okay, so it's even for the first time, at the time of death. If you had, you may have actually done it before, but this is what I think what's meant by Lama Tsongkhapa having achieved enlightenment in place of the bardo. Okay, let me see in here if there were two places where it came in the text here. What's that? Tsongkhapa. see Dzongkapa. So this would be up 159, 183. Let's see, 159. No, 183. These are the notes. Oh, it must be before this. Tsongkhapa. 109. Okay, let's see. 109. Is it here in the clear light or earlier? No, this is just quoting Lama Tsongkhapa there on 109, so it would be one before that, which would be 92 or 97. This is impure illusory body, okay. What you're doing now, okay? Okay, so here on page 92 of Daniel Kosot's work, about the middle of the page, it says, Shakyamuni Buddha in his last lifetime prior to enlightenment, page 92 in this text, about the middle of the page, not the beginning of a paragraph, the middle of the paragraph, it says, Shakyamuni Buddha in his last lifetime prior to enlightenment used an action seal, but this is in the Pure Land, Akanista, but it is said that although Tsongkhapa also became a Buddha, he did not use an action seal, becoming enlightened in the intermediate state instead. Tsongkhapa did this because he feared his followers would imitate him without being properly prepared, and thus hampering instead of enhancing their practices. Some tantric yogins, abstain from the use of the concert out of concern that they are not properly able to use desire in the path, that if they are not, they will destroy what they have previously accomplished and fall into poor migration, bad migration. Now, impelled, who is the author of the Tantra Grounds and Paths text that Kirti Sensha Rinpoche taught the last 2 years, was also a disciple of Akya Yongzin, this Yangchen Gawe Lodro. Now, impelled, however, states that if one uses an action seal after having attained mental isolation, one will incur no such faults. So how one achieves mental isolation without the use of an action seal would mean that you'd have to be a very special person. Because earlier on page 89 it says, mental isolation begins with the manifestation of the empties due to the dissolution of winds and the indestructible drop at the heart, and ends just before one rises in the illusory body. There are actually two types of mental isolation: a mere mental isolation that is achieved by depending on a wisdom seal, an imagined consort, and a final mental isolation that can only be achieved with an action seal. So it sounds like one might be able to at first achieve the mental isolation on the basis, even here, mere mental isolation depending on a wisdom seal, and then proceed, but not the final mental isolation that's able to actualize the metaphoric clear light. Ordinary person without depending on an action seal. But still, I mean, even other yogis and yoginis are said to attain that final metaphoric clear light, actual, what is it called, final mental isolation, which would mean the metaphoric clear light, on the basis of just the wisdom seal or even the Mahamudra. Mahamudra, you remember what Mahamudra meant? Would mean the meditation on emptiness with that subtle mind. That can induce it, with that subtle mind, that can induce the errors to enter into the central channel. So,
tantric path of subtle mind.
Wait a second now. Hold on. I see 97. Say that again.
The general term we hear of Mahamudra, is it referred just to the Tantric path of getting the wind in the center channel and realizing emptiness?
Actual Mahamudra is the meditative equipoise that realizes emptiness directly with the subtlemost clear light mind. So that's the great seal. So, you can have etymological divisions. Everything is sealed by emptiness. So you could say Mahamudra is the final nature of all phenomena. But when you talk about actual Mahamudra, the subjective mind realizing emptiness, the clear light mind. So ordinary beings have to rely on a karma mudra. Some beings, to enter into the mental isolation, what do they call a mere mental isolation, can depend upon a wisdom consort. So perhaps Lama Tsongkhapa may have taken that aspect. One could argue that. I don't know in his secret biography. You'd have to check in Kedrup J's biography of Lama Tsongkhapa what the position is. There might be different ideas. But certainly he could have achieved the verbal isolation, and at the time of death, at the time of the clear light, due to the winds absorbing there, due to karma, due to the death process, without having to rely on any external or visualized consort, could manifest the isolation of mind and the example clear light, and then when separating from this body, arise as the impure illusory body in place of the bardo.
Realize the metaphoric clear light in his lifetime before the time of death.
Maybe not. I'm not sure. There are different ways.
It sounds like if you achieve the metaphoric clear light, that you will necessarily, if you arise from that in this lifetime before the death process, you'll necessarily develop at the heart, where the subtlemost wind is, the illusory body, unless you project it somewhere else. There's some other disputes about that. But let's say it arises at the heart. So if he had not yet achieved the illusory body, the impure illusory body, that way he could achieve enlightenment in place of the bardo at the time of death by separating that way. So you'd have to check in the biographies, in the secret biography, and the question you can then go into more detail once you know some general understanding like this. Here, just on page 108 and 107, when we talk about the clear light, let's say 107, attaining clear light after the sutra paths. Although the other three empties are the immediately preceding or proximate causes of the actual clear light. Do you understand what that means? What are the other three empties?
The perceptions, the mind of white appearance, and the red increase.
No. Other than the clear light, the empties would be the white appearance, the red increase, and the lack of entertainment, right? So close. So although the other three empties are the immediately preceding or proximate cause of the actual clear light, when the actual clear light is going to arise, the basic prerequisites for attaining the actual clear light, it's not just enough to have the white appearance, red increase, and black entertainment. The basic prerequisites for attaining the actual clear light are either the attainment of the impure illusory body or the accumulation of merit over 3 periods of countless great eons. So, say, for instance, Shakyamuni Buddha achieved a collected merit over 3 countless great eons, or the equivalent thereof. And so he didn't, in order to actualize the meaning clear light, the actual clear light, he did not have to achieve first the impure illusory body. Achieving the impure illusory body is equivalent to achieving the merit, the collection of merit over 3 countless great eons. Okay? So in general, tantric bodhisattvas attain the impure illusory body as a prerequisite for attaining the actual clear light. Tantric bodhisattvas, those who follow the tantric path. Whereas sutra bodhisattvas accumulate merit for 3 periods of countless great eons. Because Shakyamuni Buddha accumulated merit for 3 periods of countless great eons, he was able to actualize the clear light without having to attain the impure illusory body, which would have required the use of a consort in the general sense. You know. This does not mean, however, that he became enlightened in his coarse body, nor that he shunned the use of a consort on the path. At the end of his last lifetime, prior to enlightenment, he attained the last of the 10 bodhisattva grounds, the 10 levels of the path of meditation which immediately precede the path of no more learning, that is to say, Buddhahood. He was taken to a highest pure land, which is what we call akanishta, right? It's not like one particular place, it can be your own highest pure land, where he would, in general, a 10th level bodhisattva achieves enlightenment, according to the sutra path, in akanishta. But here he was taken to highest pure land, where in his tantric practice he eventually joined with a consort. That is to say, he was given initiations. The Buddhas gave him the second initiation, the third initiation, the wisdom knowledge initiation, which is either imagining, embracing the consort, or actually receiving the consort from the tantric guru. So the Buddhas bestowed that on him with a consort name Labumo Tigle Chogma, or Devi Tilotama, the divine daughter whose drop is supreme. He received instructions and initiations from previous Buddhas, actualized the clear light, so on the basis of not having need to actualize first the example clear light and the illusory body, he received instructions and initiations from previous Buddhas, actualized the clear light and the pure illusory body, and union, which comes after the pure. The pure illusory body is the beginning of the union of a learner, whereupon he became completely enlightened. Later, he emanated a human body, the historical Shakyamuni, to teach the doctrine. So there are different ideas about how the clear light can be manifested. So you'd have to check in detail whether there's explanations in the text of how Lama Tsongkhapa is said to have achieved enlightenment in place of the bardo. I believe it is that he, at the time of death, he manifested the example clear light. So without the need, maybe he manifested visualizing consort before, and so he had the mere isolation of mind. But in order to have the final isolation of mind where you achieve the meaning clear light, the example clear light, ordinary being needs to rely on a physical consort. So he shunned manifesting that. So I've said the same thing 3 or 4 times, but does it make sense? Still not sense?
How do we know such a thing that Lama Tsongkhapa achieved enlightenment instead of the bardo?
Because his closest disciples indicated that this is what happened. And you can have doubt. Maybe you can have doubt whether anyone achieved any kind of state, right? Unless you have so other high lamas, perhaps even if you assumed they were not enlightened and they could tell what happened, that they had communication, say, with the deities and so forth, who said that this is what happened. Otherwise, how do you know, right? But this is how it's said that it is possible. It's in the sutras, I mean in the tantras, it said this is how one can achieve enlightenment in place of the bardo. And it said that Lama Tsongkhapa then actualized that particular method that had been expounded. He wasn't the first one to do this or mention this, but he took that aspect so as to prevent degeneration of the teachings after the tantric teachings after that, people thinking that they had to, use the concept. See what?
Is that okay?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on.
I'm still stuck on just forgetting how Lama Tsongkhapa achieved enlightenment, just in general, on tantric stages. That's whether you have to realize the example, clear light, before the time of death in order to be able to mix the mother and son clear light at the time of death.
To mix the mother and son clear lights at the time of death, and to that means that you have to mix the mother and son clear lights means that final clear light is going to because you can have clear light. I mean, at that point you have the clear light due to the dissolution of the elements. So you don't have to depend upon a consort beforehand or other kinds of means in order to cause all of the airs to enter into the central channel. So you can realize at that clear light time, you can realize for the first time the metaphoric clear light. Right, because before that, if you had achieved the metaphoric clear light, you would have necessarily achieved the illusory body, and you would have necessarily not had to go into the death process. You would have achieved enlightenment within that very body. So if you're going to achieve enlightenment instead of the bardo, manifests that, you would achieve as I understand it, you would achieve the metaphoric clear light at the time of the clear light of death for the first time. Yeah, because the metaphoric clear light, the first time you achieve it, you got to keep on saying the first time you achieve it, you necessarily arise as illusory body. So if you've achieved it before the clear light of death, you've necessarily arisen as illusory body before that.
If you've necessarily done that beforehand, then what would be the point of mixing the mother and son clear light at the time of death if you've already achieved the impure illusory body?
Say that again. In order to,
If
you've achieved,
you had already achieved the example clear light before the time of death, then you necessarily would have achieved the impure illusory body before the time of death.
Yeah.
So then
And you wouldn't necessarily have achieved enlightenment. You wouldn't have to go through the death process.
So then,
You would
for
achieve
what
enlightenment
reason
in that
would
way.
one mix the mother and son clear light at the time of death?
If one has not reached those stages, still you can.
You can only mix the mother and son clear light during the clear light of death.
Right.
I mean, necessarily.
Right.
I understand your
Yes.
problem.
Yes? You understand? Yeah? Yeah? So?
Without just repeating what you said. In other words, if you've attained the metaphorical illusory body before
No,
the
not usually the metaphoric clear light, the impure
clear light,
illusory
thank
body.
you. Now I'm getting. And so you're going to have attained enlightenment before death, in which case, what's the point of mixing the mother and son clear light at the time of death? I mean,
Doesn't this life mean before death?
So the
Sun clear light, does the sun clear light have to be a direct realization of emptiness? Does it have to be the metaphoric, does it have to be metaphoric clear light? Yeah, to be fully qualified, but we said the fully qualified, when we're talking about fully qualified, do we talk about fully qualified sun clear light? We're talking about, yeah. So the sun clear light can arise earlier Here it doesn't have sun, maybe under clear light.
Page 47.
Which text are you looking at, dear? Mhm. Mhm. 47. Is a clear light of death in general a fully qualified clear light? Although the mother and son clear lights that are mixed and stabilized within the view of emptiness by a yogi, yogini, are fully qualified clear light, the clear light of death that dawns for an ordinary being, not by the power of meditation, but by its own accord, is a case of imputing the name clear light to just the stoppage of gross dualistic appearance. Right, so just an ordinary clear light is not. A mother and son clear lights that are mixed and stabilized. So it doesn't address the... What did it say? You have to say which book, dear. Yeah. If you just say 109, I was... Yeah, okay. Yeah. So the term clear light can refer to either a subject or an object. The objective clear light is emptiness. It is a clear light that is to be realized. The subjective clear light is the mind realizing emptiness and can be subdivided into subjective clear lights that conceptually realize emptiness and subjective clear lights that directly realize emptiness. The subjective clear light that is a conceptual realization of emptiness is called a metaphoric clear light, and the subjective clear light that is a direct realization of emptiness is called the actual clear light. The actual clear light of the fourth stage is also spoken of as external manifest enlightenment because it is always initially manifested at dawn, just as Shakyamuni Buddha became enlightened at dawn. And the internal manifest enlightenment because it is an all-empty clear light that into which all other minds are dissolved. So your doubt is about, it's beginning to understand what your doubt is. Your doubt is that if one had not achieved, if one had achieved the illusory body, what? If one had achieved an illusory body, you wouldn't talk about that person necessarily trying to mix the son and mother clear lights at the time of death. So I think this is referring, the actual one would refer to someone who's able then to achieve enlightenment in place of the bardo. That if you're mixing the mother and son clear lights at that time, that means that due to the force of achieving the isolation of mind, the final isolation of mind due to the winds entering into the central channel, you're able then to use that mind to meditate on emptiness and achieve a conceptual, because there has to be a first conceptual realization of that. And that is mixing that with the clear light of death. Then arising in the illusory body, and then mixing that subsequent, when you, that mind that is part of the continuum, one entity with that subtle body, when that mind meditates on emptiness, eventually through meditating again and again in that state, realizing emptiness directly, then arising as the pure illusory body, and then achieving, therefore, union of a learner, and all of this stage would take place in place of the bardo. It would seem like that would be the situation. So say for instance you hadn't achieved, this is something that you'd have to ask the high tantric lamas like Kirti Senshab Rinpoche or Lati Rinpoche or Rirul Rinpoche or Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It can be perhaps that yogis who are on earlier stages of the completion stage may still be able to do some similitude of mixing the clear light, the son and mother clear lights at the time of death. Because if you're mixing the metaphoric clear light at the time of death, that means you must have achieved it previously. And like you say, if you've achieved it previously, you've necessarily achieved the illusory body. So perhaps there are ways of mixing earlier, not more conceptual, not the actual clear light that you achieved earlier, not the isolation of mind, but through the isolation of speech and isolation of body, you didn't have a fully qualified clear light that you had some conceptual realization of emptiness with. So it could be that at the time of death you can utilize that. I don't know. That seems like a possibility? So you can check.
Thank you.
On
Yes.
110, it talks about the coarse mental consciousness that realizes emptiness versus the melting bliss consciousness that realizes emptiness, and then the metaphoric clear light as a result of those. I guess it.
So we're not,
break it down.
yeah, that's,
We're not talking about bliss here, although that's part of the tantric path. We haven't entered into that. It's too esoteric for us here.
Like that, the ordinarily hidden, subtle consciousness that does not become manifest until winds dissolve in the central channel. Metaphoric clear lights that occur on the levels of physical, verbal, and mental isolation and impure, illusory body are this clear light.
The metaphoric clear lights that occur on the level of, which page is that? Okay, so let me read it so that, because maybe the microphone doesn't pick up all of your voice that well. The hidden, on page 110 of Daniel Kosart's text, the hidden meaning of clear light is the metaphoric clear light. The ordinarily hidden subtle consciousness that does not become manifest until the winds dissolve in the central channel. That's the hidden meaning of clear light, the metaphoric clear light. The metaphoric clear lights that's the hidden meaning. The metaphoric clear lights that occur on the levels of physical, verbal, and mental isolation and impure illusory body are this clear light. So I'm doubtful about that because it's talking about the metaphoric clear light on the level of the physical isolation. Usually the metaphoric clear light arises, the actual metaphoric clear light or fully qualified metaphoric clear light arises at the end of mental isolation and is a precursor, is the direct, the proximate cause, the immediate condition of giving rise to the impure illusory body. So here it's I'm not sure if that's right, the metaphoric clear lights that arise on the levels of physical, verbal, and mental isolation, but I think there are clear lights that arise then that can't give rise, and perhaps that's what's happening here. They're not fully qualified in the sense that all the errors have entered into the indestructible drop, and they're not on the level of physical and verbal isolation and mental isolation before the end of mental isolation. Maybe they're, you can use that to meditate on emptiness and have a conceptual realization, but that metaphoric clear lights, those metaphoric clear lights at that time are not capable of being the proximate cause of the impure illusory body. It's only the what do we call it? Metaphoric clear light, example clear light at the end of the isolation of mind, where all the winds have entered into the central channel. So, something to investigate. Not clear to me. You've good analysis here. Okay. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about a term that I've never really seen well explained, and that is the sport of a deity? I keep that they sport, I'm just thinking they're grooving or something. It's a term that I'm having a hard time understanding.
So this word, I mentioned a couple times during this course, this word rolba in Tibetan, like Chankya Rolpa Dorje. Rolpa, which in Sanskrit means one of the words it translates is Lalita. Lalita Vistara was the text of the story of the Buddha's the 12 deeds. So it was kind of the play of the sport of the Nirmanakaya. So the Buddha's in the Shakyamuni, before we call him Buddha, we assume just in the common view he's in Tushita heaven, not a 10th level bodhisattva. From the Mahayana point of view, already a Buddha a long time ago, and manifesting these 12 deeds as a universal teacher. And so all of these manifestations are kind of a play, kind of a manifestation or sport. So the text that word doesn't have to be thought of with the same connotations we have today as with football or whatever, but in the sense of manifesting for the welfare of others, kind of like, also having the sense of not being truly existent. It's just a play, just a manifestation. Just the sport of that omniscient mind manifesting for the welfare of others. So usually that's what it means. I mean, there are other situations when the word rolpa in Tibetan can mean just play or sport, something like that. But here, when we're talking about it in this context, it has a slightly different connotation like that. So the kind of the playful manifestation, like just manifesting. So they're not real things that are being manifested. They're not truly existent. They're manifesting without effort, spontaneously, and effortlessly for the welfare of sentient beings. So in that sense, I think they're also play. Play usually doesn't require a lot of effort, right?
So it's a Mahayana term. It is not.
I don't think you'd find it.
Anybody would do if they were in nirvana, for example. It would. Be,
No, in nirvana.
In nirvana, you're not doing it. Yeah.
No, you're doing something. At first, you remain in nirvana.
After when you achieve arhatship within the body, according to the Hinayana path, when you achieve arhatship, first you have what, from that point of view, is called a nirvana with remainder, meaning remainder of the contaminated aggregates. And later you'll have, when you sever, when this body ceases, like when same way we're talking here about in the tantric sense, when the body ceases, you'll have a nirvana without remainder of the contaminated aggregates. So that meditative equipoise will exist for a very, very long period, meditating on emptiness. But according to the Mahayana, Hinayana, for most of the Hinayana tenets, will say that the person's mind stream ceases. They take the etymology of nirvana to mean that, snuffing out. But the Mahayana says it doesn't mean the snuffing out of the mind stream, it means the snuffing out of the taking of rebirths of sorrow. It's the state passed beyond sorrow. That's how nirvana is translated into Tibetan generally. Nyanenle depa, passed beyond sorrow. So it doesn't mean snuffing out of the mind stream. The Mahayana says, hold on, the mind stream still continues at that time. The Buddhas don't disappear. The arhats do not disappear. The mind streams continue meditating on emptiness. Let's say the arhats. By the force of their renunciation and by the force of their not having generated bodhicitta, they don't arise from that meditative equipoise very quickly. When they entered into it, they thought this is the end. They're getting out of this place. It's like, remember this old song? Remember we talked about this song many times, like, I got to get out of this place, right? The Mahayanas, Bodhisattvas think more, we've got to get out of this place, right? So they remain in that meditative equipoise for a long period, and then the Buddhas, at a certain point when that samadhi begins to be suitably degenerated, the Buddhas awaken them from that and inform them psychically, however the Buddhas do, that they have not eliminated all of the obstructions from their mind. You might argue that some of them will say, I don't care. But now they're already awake. They're no longer in meditative equipoise on that emptiness. And they don't have a physical body, a gross physical body. You might say they have some kind of physical body that is the subtle wind, but it won't have the configuration of a deity or anything, I don't believe, or perhaps even a bardo being. And they then enter into taking rebirth, having understood that they have to generate bodhicitta in order to eliminate the obstructions to omniscience. They enter into taking rebirth again, not due to contaminated karma and grasping, but through the power of their determination, their prayers, like the bodhisattvas do. They take rebirth and strive to develop bodhicitta and accumulate merit equivalent to the merit of 3 countless great eons in order, along with their realization of emptiness, in order to overcome the obstructions, to eliminate the obstructions to omniscience. So, does that answer your question? I'm not sure.
It answered 3 questions.
Okay. Answered more than other questions that you were thinking of. Don.
Somewhere in this discussion, I thought, I understood you say that you could achieve the metaphoric clear light at the time of death and the clear light of death. But isn't that
The
state
actual...
non-dualistic and non-conceptual?
No, I mean,
Even the clear light of death also is, you can achieve that, the same kind of absorption of the airs to the central channel by depending, say, on a consort or on a higher qualified, higher facultied being, maybe through a visualized consort, a wisdom consort, or even the Mahamudra. But you can bring the winds into the central channel the same way and give rise to that fully qualified, kind of absorption of the winds in the central channel into the indestructible drop. So a real clear light experience arises that's like the clear light of death, except this is reversible. You will not, you will not die, It's just, afraid, I shouldn't meditate on this clear light because I might die. The karma.
You said you could do it at the time.
I think so, yeah. Well, the beforehand, in order, remember what we said, you could have something like the metaphoric clear light with the earlier clear lights in the isolation of body and isolation of speech. But those aren't clear lights that arise from the airs entering into the indestructible drop of the heart. Fully, all of the pervasive wind and everything absorbing into there. They're partial, and you can use those minds to meditate on emptiness, and you can have metaphoric clear light, but it's not the metaphoric clear light that acts as the immediately preceding condition of the impure illusory body. Otherwise, on the isolation of body, you'd suddenly be able to have the metaphoric clear light that is achieved at that stage, the meditation on emptiness, conceptual realization of emptiness with that clear light mind, you would arise as the illusory body. But that doesn't come till later. That only comes about when the clear light that arises due to all the errors entering into the into the indestructible drop at the heart. And that takes place either at the end of the isolation of mind, or the actual isolation of mind, or the time of death, when all of the errors can enter into the central channel. So even if you didn't achieve the the isolation of mind, the, what's it called, the metaphoric clear light, even if you didn't achieve the actual metaphoric clear light that is the direct cause of the illusory body during the lifetime, you can achieve that one at the time of death and arise as the illusory body in place of the bardo, the impure illusory body in place of the bardo. Because as soon as you arise as the illusory body, say the clear light of death already has ceased the body, not by your effort, not by the power of meditation, through bringing the airs in the central channel with concentration, in which case they'll again come out again after some time. But now it's irreversible, and when that clear light of mind, clear light of death ceases, instead of arising at the point of the black near attainment as the bardo being, you arise as the impure illusory body.
Since I haven't realized that metaphoric clear light before.
You haven't?
I mean, this theory, this
Yeah.
whole thing we're going through, or actually either, just in case you're wondering. I can do it. It seems like I couldn't. It seems to me I couldn't do it because it being somewhat
Couldn't
conceptual.
do what? So you can do it?
Bring up realize the metaphoric light.
Metaphorically, right?
At the time of death, if I hadn't done it prior to that, because it's a conceptual, if I'm right, it's a conceptual, dualistic, emptiness with an image, right?
But there's going to be the same thing, the same kind of state of mind occurs, the same kind of degree of subtlety of mind occurs at the end of the isolation of mind, even before the mother clear light.
So it must be like...
So wisdom.
I'm ready to do that, and my remembering consciousness when the clear light of death comes up, somehow it comes together at that time.
You could have achieved this conceptual realization of emptiness on the isolation of body and isolation of mind, but it's not the metaphoric clear light that gives rise to the illusory body at those times, because you haven't, at that point, you haven't brought all the winds into the indestructible drop at the heart chakra in the central channel. If you can do that by perhaps depending on an external consort, then you can achieve the illusory body this lifetime, and there's no need to give up this body. You can actually give up this body too at that point. You may not. You may just decide not to enter back into this body, and then it would be something similar to a person then who achieves enlightenment in place of the bardo, because with that illusory body, then you can just sever connection with this body.
So you would have to have reached that level at least of realization, of sort of an inferential...
You would have had to
Reach the level of the completion stage where the clear light, that whatever level of degree of absorption that brings about into the central channel, that gives rise to a clear light experience, some kind of clear light experience. It's not going to be as vibrant or as total as the clear light at the end of the isolation of mind or the time of death. But that clear light experience can meditate on emptiness, and you can bring, through the process, because you're going through those absorptions, the same way that we do in our practice, meditate on emptiness as the earth element is absorbing, and the water element, and the fire element, and so forth.
More gradual.
So you can
Metaphoric light switch on.
I was thinking that also before, so I'm just in your questions, this is what's coming up in my own analysis, and also from what was written in the book there. It wasn't totally clear to me that before the metaphoric clear light that you could have a conceptual realization of emptiness with a clear light mind, but it seems like you can on the physical isolation and the verbal isolation.
It's still different in the sutra.
because it's with the subtle...
Because of the technique, because of the subtlety of the mind. So in the sutra path, although you've realized emptiness, you've realized it with a gross mind. They're not methods to bring about and actualize this clear light mind. So the generation stage is just rehearsing. It's not actual causing of the clear light to rise. You might be able to have some, you might be able to rehearse, if you've realized emptiness, with that kind of rehearsal of clear light, even though it's not a subtle mind, it's still a gross mind, you may be able to realize emptiness with that. In fact, you generally do on the generation stage, because generally you develop on the generation stage a union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight that realizes emptiness. So your similitude of clear light on the generation stage, your simulation of it, you would try to use, even though it's a gross mind, you would use it to meditate on emptiness, and also arising as a deity within that, the appearance of that. Then on the generation stage, on the completion stage, you could have some metaphoric clear light, apparently on the stage of isolation of body, physical isolation, which is a conceptual realization of emptiness on the basis of that not totally absorbed clear light. It's still it's some kind of clear light, but not the clear light that can give rise to the illusory body. Should we take a break? So, I'm sorry I'm not able to answer your questions directly with some certitude, but I'm thinking about them. They're very good questions. So let's talk a little bit more. Let me just mention, again, as Nancy had shown the sheet that Crash had passed out the other day from Teachings of His Holiness, just to mention the different ways, it's a time of death, how you can utilize death. When we studied Lan Rim, and also when we did some of the earlier courses, we actually had meditation on the 9-round meditation on death, right? 9-round death meditation. Do you remember what the 9 rounds are? Who can I ask? Venerable. What are the 9 rounds? Because remember that everyone gets them out. This is something you definitely have to know. So what are...
Death is definite.
It's one of the 9?
The time is indefinite. Well, that's the 3 groups, isn't it?
So the 9 points have 3...
main divisions, right? So death is definite. The time is undefinite or indefinite. I'm not sure if there's a difference, yeah? Then? Undefinite and indefinite? Uncertain, yeah, okay. She said undefinite, I was just teasing. Okay, so death is definite, time of death is indefinite, uncertain. No, what's the third? Main.
Time of death is done.
Okay. This you should definitely have imprinted in your mind. Also Crash, definitely. These 3 main outlines. Each of them has 3 reasons to prove, supposedly to prove them, okay? So what are the 3 reasons that prove that death is definite?
A lot of people died.
Am I asking Venerable?
Has ever lived forever? Is that right?
So what...
Do you know the outline, Kunken, from the Lan Rim? So in the Lan Rim it says there are two parts of each of the reasons. The Lord of Death comes to everyone and there's no way to escape him. The Lord of Death comes to everyone. That means everyone dies and there's no way to escape it. So there's 2 separate ideas there. No way to escape it means you might try to have some modern scientific. You might try to have yourself cryogenic or cryogenically preserved, like Larry Ellison is planning to do. Maybe in the future someone will watch these in the distant future and say, well, he did it. His head is cryogenically. From the point of view of Buddhism, if the person has died, the mind stream doesn't reside in the brain. So later, anyway. So the death comes to everyone, there's no way to escape it. That's the first reason. 2 parts. Then the second part, Second reason to prove that death is definite?
Closer to death, and you can't add time onto death.
At the time of death, there's no extra life, right? So with every moment, we are approaching closer to death, and at the time of death, there's no extra time. You know, you can't kind of call, oh, just give me a couple more minutes. I forgot to meditate this life. I'll do it now. Every second, you're getting closer. And the third reason? We die even not having practiced. And that's sometimes, if you try to think of how it can be a logical reason, it's not so clear. Some of the lamas say that it's a reason for realization, to bring about a realization that death is definite. Thinking most of our life we spent not practicing the Dharma up until a certain age when we met the Dharma. Even when we met the Dharma, much of the time we weren't serious. Even now, perhaps we're not totally serious. But still we'll die, even not having practiced the Dharma. So those are the reasons that talk about the time that death is definite. Then what are the reasons that prove? Dorji, do you know why death is, the time of death is uncertain, which is a more difficult realization? Or, you know?
Well, our bodies are fragile, and our life is fragile, like a bubble.
Okay. If you were to remember, it's good to know them in some kind of order. So what was, in the Lanrim, what's the first one?
It's uncertain.
The lifespan as a human in general, in the southern continent, is in general uncertain. A human life is not generally, lifespan is not uncertain, right? Because born in the northern continent or eastern continent, there's set lifespans. But in the southern continent, it's generally uncertain. And at the time of this degeneration, it's can be even more erratic and uncertain. Then the second one? There are many causes of death and very few causes of life. And as a corollary of that, even the causes of life can become causes of death. Food and so forth. You can choke on the food, or you think you need the girlfriend or the boyfriend in order to live. You need love in order to live. And then striving for that, you can kill yourself. The car you think you need to live. I hadn't thought of that, but thanks. Glad we have some additional information. And what's the third reason? The time of death is uncertain, which is Mark's reason. The body is very fragile. Okay? And then nothing helps at the time of death except the Dharma has three reasons. Georgie, you had posed that, you had suggested that one, so do you know the reasons that can vivify that, prove that in one's mind?
Try and guess.
You can try and guess.
I can try to.
You're not going to just guess. You're going to try to guess.
I'm going to try to guess.
You may not
Don't want
actually
me to
guess.
Yeah. That we can't take anything with us like possessions. We can't take our body or possessions or anything, but we can take the imprints or realizations we have on
That's
our
kind
mind
of the meaning of the whole thing. So, what our body doesn't help at the time of death. The thing that we have strove so much for this lifetime, for the pleasure of the body, this physical senses. The body doesn't help us, no matter what physical strength or authority you have, the body doesn't help you at the time of death. Friends and relatives don't help at the time of death. They actually can hinder you. Your possessions don't help at the time of death. Your wealth, even you try to arrange the most high-tech infirmary, with air tent and, many, many doctors and everything. Doesn't, at the time of death, when your karma finishes, it doesn't help. The only thing that aids you at the time of death is the Dharma. Crash, do you have a comment?
Wouldn't death be considered a karmic event?
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
So.
Why get a set?
No. No. I mean, wouldn't that, so that kind of is an argument against.
In Crash's case, it's a CARMI. Karmic event.
It's good one, I like it.
That was mine. I don't take credit, that's John's.
So, I mean, could you argue that the time of death is uncertain? Couldn't you argue that that's not really true? If it's a karmic event. You've planted those seeds before.
Mm-hmm. The time of death is uncertain. What it means is, what that means is there's no set, at the time of birth you can say, oh, I'm born as a human being, I'll live to 500 years. In some world systems, humans have set lifespans, but in general, life as a human in the southern continent and in this world, there is no set lifespan. So the time of death is uncertain. You don't know. You don't get a meter at the time of birth. There's no certificate. The doctors don't say, oh, this one, he's going to live to 73. There's no way to know. Please, Ken.
Venerable, are you saying, you're saying that the time of death is uncertain, but then you keep going to lifespans, okay? When you're talking there, and not just, to me, it's a karmic event, and it's
well,
but even
then, the throwing karma. There's many different karmas that affect the duration of your life. The main one is the throwing karma that threw you into this life as a human. Let's say this life. So that has thrown the potential for a certain lifespan. But that's not something that's amenable to ordinary clairvoyance. The Buddhas know that, but that's still said, even then, even within that, you don't know that, so you don't know that what your prospective lifespan is. Right. But even within that, other karma can interfere with that, can cause an untimely death. You can die because of a car accident, for example, just to pull one out of the hat. You can die because of being killed by someone else. You can die because of a lack of resources. You starve to death, or you don't have air, or you don't have warmth. Torchy breathes. He was worried. He was afraid maybe his karma to have air was finished. So different kind of karma, or of illness and so forth. So different kinds of karma. Even if you were to have some intimation of what your prospective throwing karma was, what kind of lifespan, you would still, it's uncertain that you'll be able to live that out, because other karma can ripen. The fact that the Buddhas know that doesn't mean that your life is uncertain to you.
And I wasn't saying that this was something you knew.
I wasn't saying that you said that. Either. Okay. So, on the as His Holiness mentions in that article that Pat had handed out and Nancy was showing us before, His Holiness mentions different levels. At one level, you want to be able to die at the time of death without fear. The first kind of level of practitioner. So that would be one that in this lifetime, you've abstained from heavy negative karmas. You've purified as much as possible, and to a good extent, you have you can face death without this kind of nagging fear of immediate rebirth in the lower realms. It doesn't assure that you won't be born in the lower realms, but with some kind of sense of taking refuge, you have some kind of confidence, because if you can die with a mind of refuge, you won't be reborn in the lower realms. That's for us, maybe that would be a great gift. On a second level, if you've developed more positive states of mind, say, tried to develop a state of bodhicitta, or compassion and love and so forth, and patience, and aspire to that, you make very strong determination in future lives that from the very beginning, May I encounter the Mahayana path, work for the welfare of others, be less selfish, and even if you don't have actual bodhicitta, to die with happiness, with this kind of plan. The third kind of way of dying would be an individual, a tantric practitioner who has reached one of these stages of the completion stage and has some ability to merge that realization of emptiness that they've encountered before with the clear light of death. So they can actually look forward. They actually say, oh boy, death is coming. No, for us right now, if someone were to tell you today, I'm sorry, I'm sorry to tell you this, you just have 5 days to live, 6 months to live or something like this, we would be sweating bullets. Was that the right term? The old comic book terminology, huh? Sweating bullets. So the individual who has the capacity to practice the completion stage and has developed that, a realization of emptiness with a clear light mind, even if it's inferential, they can merge that with the clear light of death, even though it's not going to necessarily give rise to the illusory body afterwards. They can have a very strong continuity, a very deep meditation on emptiness, because although in their practice of the completion stage up to then, they hadn't been able to bring all the airs into the central channel, at the time of death they can bring all the airs into the central channel, and they can have a deeper kind of realization of emptiness with that clear light mind, leaving a very strong imprint and dying without grasping. They can, especially because all of this is predicated, actual practice of the completion stage is predicated on having achieved the generation stage where you're on the path of accumulation. So you already have bodhicitta in theory. That person will be born as a human and in contact and somehow with Tantra. So those are different ways of dying. There are other ways of thinking also, to die, to transfer your consciousness to a pure land, and so forth. That's not being talked about in this context right now. So when we practice, in those of you who've taken some tantric initiations, highest yoga tantric initiations, highest yoga tantra, in the stages of that practice, one of the main practices, even though it may not be enunciated in detail, depending on the brevity or the extensiveness of the sadhana, one of the most important stages is taking the 3 kayas into the path. That's what this text has been talking about, essentially. So that means emulating or simulating the death evolution, as one might do on the stage of completion, and trying to recognize that clear light, final clear light, as the meaning of emptiness. Meditating on that, leaving an imprint, ripening the ability on the completion stage to be able to do that. Then imagine arising, instead of the bardo, is the illusory body. And then as the Sambhogakaya. And then arising as the Nirmanakaya, taking rebirth within the fertilized egg, and the fertilized egg of the mother and the fertilized by the father, and emanating that grosser kind of body for the sake of sentient beings. So in that case, say a person who takes that kind of rebirth, maybe they're actually not, they don't depend, their body is actually an emanation body at that time. Someone who's actually highly realized, like Shakyamuni Buddha himself. How he arose in the mother's womb was not as a manifestation of that embryo, but taking rebirth there and manifesting within the womb. And supposedly in the Lalita Vistara it said that he taught, it was a little temple within the mother's womb that was mentally created, not out of wood and masonry and everything, and that the gods actually came and he taught for those months while he was in the mother's womb, the various gods and so forth. So any other thoughts or worries? Yeah.
On page 61, first paragraph.
On page which? 61?
61, taking birth. And it talks about the fact that it makes a statement and it seems to kind of contradict itself. And it talked about the fact that there are 3 ways in which an intermediate being can be reborn, a human. And that is by entering in through the male's mouth at the top of the head or into the womb. But then it goes on to say, basically, it suggests to me that the way you enter into the mother's womb is through the male's head or the male's mouth. It kind of suggests on the one hand that if there are 3 ways of entering, 3 doors of entry to the womb, that the third one, the door to the female's womb, being exclusive of that of the mouth of the male's head, suggests, and now I'm getting Catholic, the virgin birth. And
no, that means entry into the womb means into the middle of the. Here it says the consciousness of the dying intermediate being makes connection to the new life in the middle of the semen and blood in the fertilized egg. So whichever door it enters, it has to enter into that fertilized egg. If you're talking about the rebirth of an ordinary being. If you're talking about bodhisattva, like for instance, if you conceive of Christ from a Buddhist perspective, I don't think you would want to present this to Jerry Falwell or whoever the others are. But from a Buddhist perspective, if you believe that Christ was a bodhisattva, not necessarily practicing the Tantra path, he could have still, as if on the path of seeing and so forth, manifested within the mother's womb and have had just a mental body and can manifest that way. So it wouldn't necessarily have to depend upon, but higher bodhisattvas like that don't have to depend on the sperm and egg and so forth.
on any sexual union.
Right. So it could be, but in the case of, in the case of many, maybe they still, for the sake of according with the ways of the world, they would wait till their mother and father who are married or in union or something like that. Okay. So let's do another little meditation on the knowing some of these things that we discussed. Let's again meditate on the absorptions at the time of death. It's not enough to do once, like His Holiness has explained in some interviews. He himself does maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or more times a day because he has certain tantric commitments to generate as the deity through that kind of death evolution. So getting familiar with that will make it easy at the time of death. So again, whatever method that you've used, that you get familiar with to calm the mind, whether it's watching the breathing or watching the clear light nature of the mind, try to calm the mind first of all. Then think of dying in this way as a practitioner of the completion stage,
where one has achieved some kind of metaphoric clear light during the meditation stages during life. Or just as a preparation to that. Just to imagine the death evolution as part of the generation stage. Whatever means you use, whether due to the karma of death or the absorbing of the winds into the central channel through the methods of the isolation of body or isolation of speech, or such as Vajra recitation or Tumo or whatever. First of all, the air, there are signs of the air element absorbing. Mirage-like vision, at which point the form aggregate is absorbing. The eye faculty. So the distractions due to the eye will be less in general. The wisdom, basic wisdom, that is mirror-like. And one notices that mirage-like vision and remembers that previously there was no vision like this of the absorptions. Next, there will be the appearance of the absorption of the water element, the smoke-like vision. Eventually, at the clear light, I must remember emptiness. So I'm going to meditate on that now. This is how one brings the realization of emptiness to the clear light in meditation, so that you can have the sun clear light. So think of the self that's appearing to your mind now, and remember your previous meditation. This self that I've cherished, that seems so real, the grasping to it, instigating my resentment of others when they criticize me or tease me, causes so much ambition, worldly ambition, striving for the meaningless activities of this life, for pleasure and wealth and so forth. This I that appears to my mind as truly existent doesn't exist at all. The ego grasping that's grasping to it is an erroneous mind. It's based on falsity, and it can be eliminated. It's an ignorance. Why is the I empty of being truly existent? Because the I that does exist is a dependent arising. Merely a name, merely a concept imputed to my body and mind, my five aggregates. So try to simulate that great vacuity now. With this relatively gross mind, that vacuity, although at that time the vacuity appears, there's no thinking this is the meaning of emptiness and so forth in reality. But subsequent to that, like the liberated path, there's a recognition of the I having been recognized as non-truly existent. And the water element absorbs, and we have the smoke-like vision. while the feeling aggregate, the ear faculty, the moisture of the body absorb. We've arisen from the meditation on emptiness and of observing this changed situation because the airs have now changed, disturbing the meditation. Previously there was the mirage-like vision. Next there's the firefly vision. I must remember emptiness, the meaning of emptiness at the time of death. So perhaps thinking now of something more subtle, the emptiness of the aggregates that form the basis of designation of the person. My body, when I think of my body, I'm too thin, I'm too heavy, I'm too ugly, or too beautiful. There is a sense of a findable, truly existent body, as with the other aggregates. But body is just a name we impute to a collection of parts. Even those parts, the arms, the legs, whatever, are a collection of parts. They merely exist as concepts also. Meditate on the emptiness of the aggregates. Vast vacuity, like space, like clear light. Having been induced by this analysis that the body is not truly existent because it's a dependent arising, only a concept. It has no existence from its own side. The conceived object of the innate ego grasping to a body, the conceived object is non-existent, is empty. And the fire element dissolves along with the discrimination aggregate, and we have the vision of fireflies, while the nose faculty diminishes, the basic wisdom of individual analysis. Previously there was a smoke vision. Next there'll be the vision of the dying butter lamp. I must remember emptiness at the time of death. It's like thinking I must get up at a certain hour, I must do this later, I must remember to do this. Or I must remember my dream as a dream at the time of sleep. A kind of firm determination. So meditating, all phenomena, objects, states, appearances are not truly existent because they're dependent arisings. Even to a Buddha's mind, nothing appears with any particular inherent appearance, only depending upon the minds of sentient beings that the Buddha knows what we see. Trees don't appear as trees. They have no inherent existence even to a Buddha. Their conventional existence is merely imputed according to our level of karma, karmic appearances. The air element absorbs the vision of the dying butter lamp, while the compositional factors aggregate basic wisdom of accomplishing activities, the tongue and body faculties dissolve. Just a moment ago there was the appearance of fireflies. Next there'll be the white appearance. I must remember emptiness at the time of clear light. So even this appearance, not appearing to our consciousness easily, other phenomena, even this appearance, although it appears to us due to the imprints of delusion from beginningless time, appears to be truly existent, it too only exists as a concept, as a name imputed to this. There's no findable dying butter lamp vision. Within its parts, outside its parts. All phenomena are empty of true existence because they're dependent arisings. The consciousness aggregate begins to absorb basic wisdom of Dharmadhatu, the 80 indicative conceptions, along with this vision, the dying butter lamp. Then the white drop at the crown descends, and we have the much subtler mind now, without any conceptualizing thoughts, no longer thoughts of anger, attachment, self, life activities, aims, just the appearance of vacuity pervaded by white light. And the remembering consciousness, mindfulness, recalls the meaning of emptiness. Even this appearance is empty of true existence. The red element moving from the navel upward, after some time, disturbs, again the winds flowing, disturbs the meditation on emptiness, and we experience the appearance of a red increase. Again, the mindfulness recalls the meaning of emptiness. Even this appearance, any appearance, which is the conceived object of innate ego grasping, is not existent. All phenomena are not truly existent because they're dependent arisings. A change again due to the winds, the black near attainment, as the white and red drops meet at the indestructible drop at the heart. Very, very subtle mind. Still some mindfulness, even though the mind is becoming subtler. We try to carry to this point the recollection of emptiness. Although there's a vacuity, it's dark, but recognize even this darkness is not truly existent. And use this mind to meditate on emptiness. Again, just a vacuity appears without any darkness if we meditate on the emptiness. Falling into the swoon at the last part of the black near attainment. And the clear light of death, dawning, very, very subtle mind at your heart chakra, no conceptual thoughts, like a vast spaciousness, like at the time of dawn, first light, as though you could see forever, no dust, no clouds. Here just manifesting due to the dissolution of airs into the central channel. Subtlemost mind. Although a vacuity, empty, we have to recognize this as the meaning of emptiness, just as we did with the earlier three empties. Remembering consciousness of that arises, non-verbal. Bliss consciousness. And a recognition, a labeling that this is I, this is the Dharmakaya. The continuity of this clear light, wisdom, consciousness will eventually become the Dharmakaya. So imagine bringing it to this present time. If you think that this is just playing, think the ordinary way I think of myself is more erroneous, grasping at myself as truly existent. You're not grasping at the self as being Dharmakaya, really imputing that, bringing the future state into the present. And think, if I remain in this state, I won't be able to immediately affect the Arya Bodhisattvas. I'm going to manifest as the Sambhogakaya, wisdom, the enjoyment body. So out of that clear light, as the first quiver of air takes place in the reverse order, like near attainment of the reverse order, I arise as the seed syllable of the deity and develop the divine pride of being the Sambhogakaya. Then wishing to help all sentient beings, knowing that only Arya Bodhisattvas can perceive the Sambhogakaya aspect. I see a white moon disk with a reddish shade, symbolizing the fertilized egg of mother and father, and having wished to enter into that to manifest the emanation body and descend upon that moon disk. Take possession in a sense. Send out light rays, purifying sentient beings in the aspect of the deity. Those lights come back, sending out light rays with offering goddesses to all the Buddha fields of the Buddhas, every atom of the universe, numberless Buddha fields, making elaborate offerings. Again, come back. And you transform into the Nirmanakaya aspect of the deity, taking rebirth. Within this state, always being conscious of emptiness. The higher bodhisattvas who might take rebirth this way, visualizing themselves as the deity. So then think whatever merits I've produced during today, this course, all of the studies that we've had, created karmic imprints in my mind, virtuous karma due to motivation at the beginning, temporal motivation during the activities. Whatever way these merits ripen, may they not become simply wasted in some samsaric relief alone. They'll definitely come about, first of all, ripening in some samsaric pleasure, contaminated pleasure. But in whatever way they ripen, may they become the cause of my development of the realizations of the path. Perfect renunciation that understands all the marvels of cyclic existence as like chaff, uninteresting, of no essence, meaningless, and striving for liberation. May they become the cause of the purest mind of bodhicitta, the conventional bodhicitta, with two aspirations, aspiring to achieve enlightenment, having aspired for the welfare of sentient beings, decided that that's the best way to bring that about. Practicing the 6 perfections. The ultimate bodhicitta, the wisdom of emptiness held by that bodhisattva's mind, first conceptually, then eventually directly. Due to these merits, may I, in this very lifetime, develop these 3 fundamental aspects of the path. And especially due to the very special fortune, encounter the tantric teachings given by realized beings, realized tantric masters, authentic masters, practice the devotion to the spiritual guide very authentically, the root of the path, keeping my vows and words of honor pure, practicing the generation and completion stages, may I quickly achieve enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings due to these merits. So dedicating in one's mind, turning them, sort of making a firm determination. This is what they're reserved for, these merits, all the merits that I've created and will create. And rejoice about that. How wonderful it is that I've had the fortune, having created the karma in the past, to hear these teachings for these many courses. Eliminated much darkness from my mind. How wonderful that is. Rededicate that merit. Again, the merit of rejoicing. That we may put these teachings into practice, not just keep them as intellectual knowledge alone. And seal the dedication in the emptiness of the 3 spheres. The merits that we've accumulated, that we conceptualize, do exist merely as concepts. As we've meditated on emptiness again and again, thinking, although the merits do exist in a conventional sense, designated with names and concepts,
They have no inherent existence the way that my ordinary mind grasps to them when I think of them, how they appear to my mind, yet they still function. The goals dedicated to cannot be found within their bases of designation. They don't truly exist, inherently exist, but can be achieved at stages of the path. Even the act of dedication, trying to join these merits with these goals, thinking I dedicate these merits to these goals, wishing them to be ripen in this way. Even the dedication is not truly existent, can't be found on any of the parts, merely a name we give to that process. Relax. Thank you very much. Had a good practice day, and please continue to study. Don't always think. I always try to recall. This is just like you just think first rough sketch of the subject. Don't think that you've finished the subject of death, intermediate state, and Bardo, death, intermediate state, and rebirth. Sort of whatever this we've learned, it can act as a basis then for studying it again when you hear the subject again, to go into more detail, clarify the doubts that you have.